Good afternoon, everybody here in Europe, I guess. Good morning to some of the folks in the US and other countries as well, of course. I know some are watching from other countries as well. Good evening to some of you, perhaps even. Thank you, Microsoft and Christian, for organizing this event and for inviting me to speak here today. It's my pleasure. It's my honor, so to speak. So. I'm going to talk about some of the WVD technical partners, hence the name of the presentation as well, of course. I have a lot of ground to cover and only 40 to 45 minutes, so I'll jump right in with a short introduction of myself and then take it from there. My name is Bas van Kaam. I'm 41 years old. I work as a senior cloud technologist and business consultant for a company called Salomon IT, which is based in the Netherlands, a Dutch company based in Amsterdam, actually. From a more personal point of view, I live in the Velsenbroek. We just moved to a new house a couple of months ago. I'm engaged to Tineke and I'm a proud member of a team from Kaam. These are my kids. Excuse me. Max just turned 1 a couple of months ago. So as you can imagine, it's great to spend time with, with these guys in my spare time, of course. I'm quite involved in various community initiatives. I worked on a couple of books. Written hundreds of blog posts, did multiple presentations. Just recently, a couple of months ago, we started the EUC Digest podcast, so give that a listen as well if you might be interested. Furthermore, blogging, writing is one of my hobbies as well, of course. I like to go out for a run 4 or 5 times a week, so, if there are any more sports enthusiasts out there, let's connect on Strava. Always fun to see what other guys are doing as well, and girls, of course. Yeah, and that goes for the other socials as well. Let's connect and, get to know one another a bit better. So as for the title of the presentation today, I've named it the Ultimate WVD Partner Cheat Sheet, and that's because I've done multiple cheat sheets in the past throughout the last couple of years. I've done multiple on WVD as well, as you can see here as well. Just last year in June of 2019, I did my first WVD Partner Cheat Sheet, and then a couple of months later, I came up with version 2.0, but it's near to impossible to keep up because I remember when I published this cheat sheet version 2.0 that at the same night before I published it, Microsoft already added 2 or 3 or perhaps even 4 new partners to the list. So impossible to keep up. I stopped doing that. So if you don't know this website already, go and have a visit. It lists all the WVD technological certified partners with regards to WVD Microsoft. You'll see them listed. Is refreshed, well, not weekly, but I think monthly. But if you have a look at the list, you'll also notice probably that they are not in alphabetical order, not in chronological order either, or ordered by solution type. And of course, all of the vendors have, awesome solutions. They also have fun and great names, but they don't make sense. You look at the names and you don't know if it's, if it's monitoring software, if it's thin clients or something else. So for that, I also wanted to point out another community resource written by Marius Sandpoel. Give this a visit as well. And as you can see on the image, there are a couple of things he did here. So for one, he took a look at all of the other available Azure services and how they fit in with WVD, how they can add something on top or work with WVD, for example. So that's something I really like. And he did the same, as you can see at the bottom of the image as well, with some of the third-party services and vendors as well. And one of the things he did there is he put them in various categories, which I think is something that Microsoft might consider doing as well. It's a bit more clear. It's something I did when I started working on the presentation a couple of weeks ago as well. I came up with these 4 categories. Of course, we could have a discussion if these are correct, if more should be added or perhaps less or whatever. I've also took a look at the various WVD partners available today, of course, because that's what I'm presenting about today, of course. These are their icons. And again, we could have a discussion if these are correctly placed or not, but I think you get the main idea, and this might help some of you out there once you get your hands on the slides as well. So Marius, this one might help. What am I going to talk about today with regards to some of the WVD partners out there? I thought about, well, you have something now and you want to move to WVD. You need to build it, configure it, size it, and so on and so forth. Which steps are you need to go through? Now, again, some discussion might happen here if these are the correct steps in the correct order. But again, that's not the point of the presentation. I think I've got them quite right. The idea is to talk about some of the partners and what they have to, what they bring to the table to make life a little easier for you. So I'm not going to be able to, I'm not able to discuss all partners, of course, there are just too many. I've picked out some. Perhaps some lesser knowns as well, something that I'm hoping for, because that would mean you learn something and see something new today, perhaps. And of course, desktop as a service solution providers as well. In fact, I'm going to start with those. So currently there are 4 certified desktop as a service solution providers out there. I guess, or I think, I'm pretty sure that most of you will know Citrix and VMware. WorkSpot and CloudJumper might be a bit lesser known. So if that's the case, go and have a look at their websites. Of course, these are all different solutions. They have a different, sort of a different approach, different interfaces, different feature sets as well. But they do have a few things in common, of course. They all have a control plane up in Azure or AWS as well in some cases, which they use for automation, provisioning, control management, and so on and so forth. And they all tightly integrate or interact with some of the Azure WVD APIs, the service that is. So they can use the Windows 10 Enterprise multi-session image as part of the WVD proposition. So that's something that they can all do. Something else that they have in common is they can all, from their cloud-based management control plane, they can all provision, manage, maintain, and so on and so forth on-premises VDI and RDSH deployments as well. Of course, that would mean that you cannot use Windows 10 Enterprise multi-session because that's not available on premises yet. Because if you're interested, you might want to have a look at Azure Stack Hub, because if you use that, or if you are going to use that in the future, then Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session as part of the WVD proposition is available to you. But just remember, it's still in private preview. So my guess is you would still have to wait at least 6 to 12 months before you will be able to use that in production. That's not something that Microsoft says. That's sort of my thought on the matter. Okay, let's talk a bit about assessments and general recommendations, because when you're moving to WVD, you will have a current environment as well. Perhaps you're moving part of that to WVD. Perhaps you will start out completely evergreen within WVD. It doesn't really matter. It helps if you sort of have a blueprint which you can use to right size and start configuring, you know, the whole all the WVD components before your users are going to use it. Now for this, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes talking about Lakeside Systrack. They have a pretty cool free offering currently, which is a WVD assessment, which you can use up to 60 days. And they will help you with, as the slide says as well, right-sizing your WVD environment. They will look at what you have now and come up with a resource consumption charts so you can see what kind of CPU, memory, network IO resources are currently being used by your workloads on premises or perhaps within a cloud if you have that up and running already, but you want to move that to WVD, which can happen of course as well, of course. They will look at user experience, performance monitoring stuff. Pretty cool and handy to have before you start building and configuring and sizing your WVD environment. Again, it's free to use for up to 60 days, but you'll probably have useful information perhaps within a couple of hours, a couple of days, or at least a couple of weeks. 60 days is more than enough, of course. These will sort of this will give you an indication of the information you'll get out of the assessment. As you can see on the left-hand side of both slides, or 2 slides in one, there's much more to cover, but it's just to give you an indication, of course. It works side by side, 2 separate solutions, but it works side by side with Azure Migrate. And I just wanted to give you a quick peek on how to get started with that. So if you go to the Azure portal, you search for Migrate. You go into Migrate. First, you'll need to select what it is you want to migrate. Of course, we're not migrating anything just yet. We would like to do an assessment, but this is how it works with regards to the Lakeside assessment. You'll select VDI, add tools. First, you will need you need to fill in your subscription, perhaps create a new resource group for management purposes, which I normally always do. Let's call it Migrate. Give your Migrate project a name. Let's call it production, for example, the geography Europe is fine by me. Next, you will be able to select Lakeside Systrack, which we want to do, of course, because we want to assess and not migrate. And that's also why skip adding a migration tool for now is selected by default, because first we want to assess, and then perhaps later on we want to use the migration service as well. Click next, give it a review, and then select add tools. Now it will be added to your subscription. The resource group will be made as well. I need to give it a refresh, I think. And then the assessment tool will be added. Click on Learn More, because you'll need to register with Lakeside to be able to use the tool, which makes sense, of course. Click on Get Your Free WVD Assessment. Click on Get Started and just get in contact with Lakeside, and then take it from there. Pretty straightforward and a nice tool to get you started up and running, perhaps even rather quickly with regards to setting up your WVD environment. So back to the presentation. Of course, this can also be used once WVD has gone to production. All you have to do is install a couple of agents on your WVD machines, on your end user devices, and then it will continuously collect information, which will be sent, in this case, to the Lakeside data mine engine. And from there, you will get recommendations, optimization pointers, and so on and so forth to, to fine tune your WVD environment as it is being used by your users. Now let's talk a bit about user profiles and data, or personal data, perhaps even more specific, because if you move from something you have now to WVD, you don't want your users to start out with empty user profiles or without their data, for example. It holds configuration information, personal information, and your users won't be happy if they have to start all over, basically. So here I want to talk a bit about Liquidware. First of all, Liquidware also has a Stratosphere UX, which focuses on performance monitoring, the user experience in general, but it can also help you with, gather resource consumption metrics with regards to CPU, memory, IOPS network, but also GPU intensive workloads, for example. So which is sort of like what Lakeside, like I just mentioned, is doing as well. But here I wanted to focus a bit more on Profile Unity and FlexApp. With regards to user profiles, Profile Unity can help you to inventory user profiles and personal data, and then help you migrate that from an existing environment, which might be on-prem, which might already be in the cloud. It doesn't really matter. It helps you to migrate that data from something you have now into WVD. And that can also be an older Windows 7 environment, for example, or older versions of Windows 10 up to WVD, where you might be using any of the server operating systems, but also Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session, for example. Now, application layering is something else that they do with their product called FlexApp, which helps, as the slide says as well, to streamline your image management with regards to WVD, and in general, of course, not just WVD. It helps to sort of create an abstraction layer for the application, so you can take it offline while your users, or make a copy, take it offline while your users are still using the original application, and then make updates, do patches, and then put it back when needed at night, for example. So pretty cool stuff. Now, both these solutions, Profile Unity and FlexApp, have something else in common as well. They can make use of native cloud storage. So with regards to WVD, that would mean that you could store all the user profile data, the other data, but also the FlexApp VHDs, which get created as part of the application layering process, that you can store that directly into Microsoft Azure Blob Storage. So that would mean that you won't, that you no longer have to set up, configure, and so on file servers. And for a mid-sized environment, that would mean multiple file servers in most cases. So if you haven't heard of this before, go and check it out, because it's pretty cool technology. Okay. Now, before we can migrate anything, we do the assessments, we do all that stuff, we think about image management, but first we need to have something that we can migrate it to. So it's been discussed a couple of times already today, the deployment of WVD, and of course Microsoft is working on some new stuff as well. But here I wanted to introduce you to Nerdio. I've got to know Nerdio a couple of weeks ago, and I've looked at their product, which I'm going to show you as well. And Nerdio is a company that has been around for four and a half years, something like that, almost 5 years. but the company behind Nerdio has been around longer, since 2005. And they've always focused on basically automating, all the VDI and RDSH stuff for their customers, for MSPs, with a prime focus when it comes to the Nerdio portfolio on, mid-sized mid-sized and smaller companies. Was about to say, because they have two products. They have Nerdio for Azure, which is the mid-sized company solution I just mentioned. And just a couple of weeks ago, they launched, which is now GA, is what I mean, Nerdio Manager for WVD. And as far as I'm concerned, with regards to WVD, that's where the magic happens, because the other solution I just mentioned, Nerdio for Azure, also has some WVD management capabilities built in there. But this one is, it's just better, simply put. It's available as an Azure application. You will deploy it, install it within your own tenant. Pretty easy. I've done it a couple of times throughout the last couple of weeks. Will take you 10 to 15 minutes, including 15 to 20 minutes of wait time for the automation stuff to get built. It's supported in all regions. It has all of the FS Logics goodness, profile management stuff built in. Image and session host management is easy to do. You don't have to know or do anything with PowerShell, and also the auto scaling part, which takes care of the adding and removing in hosts when the user demand increases or decreases, is very easy to configure as well, which I'd like to show you actually. So let's do another short demo over to my browser. So once you've successfully installed Nerdio Manager for WVD, this is the first screen after you've taken care of the configuration steps, of course. But once you are able to log in, this is the first screen that you will see. And of course, it will be empty, because one of the first things you'll do when it comes to WVD, as we've probably all done a couple of times before, is add in a tenant. And I'm going to show you how fast it works, how easy it is, and the things you'll need to take care of, which is basically just this. You can give it a friendly name, a description, click OK, and just within a few seconds, you'll see complete here, and the tenant has been added. And if you want to do something about the friendly name or something like that afterwards, you'll be able to simply change that afterwards as well. Now, once you've added in a tenant, you'll probably want to configure or add in one or multiple host pools. Now here you have the option to choose between a static host pool and a dynamic host pool. Now, the main difference between the two is quite simple. If you use a static host pool, then hosts will have to manually be added and removed to and from the static host pool. And with manually, I mean using this graphical interface and not PowerShell, of course. Now with a dynamic host pool, you have the same option. You can manually add in hosts. You can manually remove hosts, but you can do, or you can let autoscale take care of that as well under certain circumstances. So let's create a dynamic host pool. I'll call it dynamic. You'll have to give in a name prefix. So this information will be used, as you'll see in just a minute as well, when new machines are added. So when autoscale kicks in, because the user demand increases, for example, 2 or more, 1 or 2 or 3 hosts will be automatically added, and this is the information that will be used. You can select an image. I've imported this image a couple of weeks ago, as you can see, which I'll show you when I finish this demo as well, just rather quickly. Select the VM size. These are basically all the VM sizes which are available on Azure as well, and the same applies to the OS disks that go with the image as well. You can assign users from Active Directory, which is something you'll have configured as part of the manager for WVD setup. I'm not going to do that now. Click OK, and then the dynamic host pool is being set up in the background. And within a few seconds, one of the first screens that you will see is the autoscale part I was just talking about. Here it is. It's turned off by default. Of course, we can turn it on. I'll leave it off for now because I'm not going to save the settings. And here again, you see the information we just needed to fill in, which will be used for automatically adding in new hosts. And this is where it gets interesting. So with regards to host pool sizing, here it says with regards to the base capacity, 5 hosts will need to be in the pool at all times. And these hosts can be active, or they can be shut down, or anything in between. And a minimum of 1 host needs to be active for my users to be able to connect to. So that's something you can configure, of course. And when hosts are added automatically by use of autoscale, then in this case, at least 2 hosts will be added to the pool. Now, with regards to the scaling logic you can use, I'm not going to go over the various metrics. You can play around that with for yourself if you would like to. You have a couple of options or triggers you can choose from: CPU usage, average active sessions, and available sessions. And they're also adding in memory usage over the host pool not too long from now. So that's something you can give a try. Pre-stage hosts, something you can easily turn on, and then you can select a time frame or time window, a time, and of course the time zone as well. And you can just say, at this time, I want to have 1 or multiple hosts active and ready for my users to connect to be able to connect to, so you can take care of login storms, boot storms, or whatever you like to call it, or perhaps you can have you can make up another use case as well. Now, with auto scaling, it means that machines will not only be added, they will be automatically removed as well. And for that, the machines will be turned into drain mode, and then you can use this messaging module to well, basically to inform your users. So I'm not going to save this. I'm going to cancel out of this. Now, once you've set up your host pool, you would like to add in hosts to your host pool, and that's how you do that. So you just simply click it, add in a session host, take care of the configuration, click add, and within 15, 20, 25 minutes, a host will be added to your host pool. I mentioned desktop images earlier. This is an image I've imported a couple of weeks ago. You can add in an Azure VM, which might be pre-configured, and then that will be used as a template. Or you can choose to add in images from the Azure library as well, which is the same as I just showed you. They are all available here. Have a look at some of the other options, click OK, and it will be imported. So that's basically what I wanted to show you with regards to Nerdio Manager for WVD for this presentation. There's more to share, there's more to tell. Go and try it out for yourself, I guess. Okay, let's continue with the presentation. Just a sip of water. 1 second. That's good. So let's focus on applications for a couple of minutes because we have multiple options there, of course, as well. We already had MSIX app attach, which to many comes close to application layering, I guess. So we have application layering as well. We can natively install applications onto the WVD image, which is optional, or we can use a traditional application layering solution, like I mentioned with Flex app from Liquidware, for example. Here, I wanted to talk about cloud paging, perhaps known by some, perhaps not known by others. But cloud paging is a product, is a technology made by excuse me, a company called Noomsyn. So Noomsyn is the company behind the product cloud paging. And the cool thing about cloud paging is that you can basically do all three. You can do like with application virtualization, like with AppV, where the application is fully isolated with regards to the underlying operating system and other files and folders and registry keys on there. It can do that. It can be partly isolated. It can do partly isolated applications, like with application layering, for example. Or it can have an application act as if it was natively installed on the machine as well. So when an application is turned into pages, as they like to call it, and I'll show you how that's done in just a couple of minutes, you have a couple of options. So for one, and by the way, I'm going to tell you about something more about the container and these various layers that you see in the image as well in just a minute as well. So once an application has been turned into pages, and then a user starts a paged application, you can choose when you configure the application into pages if the application needs to be fully isolated, for example. So it will then be pulled into the isolation disposition layer. Perhaps some of the application parts, some files and folders don't work in the full isolation mode, and you want them, excuse me, and you want them to be partly isolated, which means they will be pulled into the integrated disposition layer. Or option number 3, you could basically mix and match. You could also have parts of the application, or the complete application perhaps, act as if it was natively installed on the machine as well, which is also something you can do. And the best thing is, once you've turned an application into pages, and you would like to change a couple of files or folders or registry keys because it don't work in full isolation mode, for example, you don't have to basically repackage the whole application again. You can just go into the configuration, select the files, folders, and registry keys that don't work in full isolation mode or in the isolation disposition layer, and you can select those to work or to be paged, pulled into the integrated disposition layer. And then just save it, and it will work on basically on the next launch, which is pretty cool, cool technology. So, and unique as well. This is how it works. You would have Cloud Paging Studio, and with Cloud Paging Studio, you reformat an existing application into pre-virtualized instructions. These will be encrypted, which are the pages I'm talking about throughout the last couple of minutes. Optionally, you could use a cloud paging server, which you could configure on premises or within a cloud environment of choice, being Azure in this case, of course. You could also use their CDN, their content delivery network, which is based on AWS. So you won't have to build up and maintain and so on a cloud paging server at all. And then on the client side part, you would have the cloud paging player, which mainly consists out of the virtual memory management unit. And that's basically where the magic happens with regards to the end user part. So the virtual memory management unit, it will pull in the application pages. It will know exactly where which page needs to go with regards to the various layers I was just mentioning. So it will know which parts of the application will need to be fully isolated, partly isolated, and so on and so forth. And it will also start with only those pages needed to start the application, which makes it very fast as well. So once the user starts using the application, all of the other pages needed for the rest of the application will be pulled in by the virtual memory management unit in the background, basically. That's how it works. So hopefully this made some sense. If not, I'm sure Cloud Paging or the guys over there are more than happy to tell you more, and I would be more than happy as well, of course. So as you can tell from my story, again, hopefully, these are not traditional layers, as in application layering, like I just mentioned a couple of times as well, or containers, as in the sense of a Docker container or a Turbo container or something like that. They work for both physical and virtual machines, being WVD, of course, and of course it works in the cloud, on-prem, and basically everywhere you can think of. They have their own protocol as well. They own a bunch of patents with regards to all of this technology I just mentioned, including their own protocol, which makes it work for slow connections, high latency internet and wide area network connections, crappy Wi-Fi connections, and anything you can think of. And like I just mentioned a few times already, you can basically turn the isolation features on and off. And working with these various layers, you'll probably get a very high percentage of your current application landscape, which you can turn into pages and sort of virtualize for your WVD deployments or any other environments you might have. And because of the Tainer, the small client, it also makes it very easy to lift and shift between different operating systems and between different platforms. Okay, just another sip of water in between. I talk quite fast. I hear that a lot. So and it's also something that I'm aware of. But I need to take a sip every now and again. Okay, let's talk about printing for a couple of minutes, because I think we all know, or most of you anyway, that printing can be hard, especially when remote environments come into play. And of course, when we are talking about WVD, it's all remote, basically. It's all in Azure, with a few exceptions here and there, perhaps in the future. And here I wanted to introduce you, for those who don't know Triseret yet, to Triseret. Now, they have multiple solutions, and one of those solutions aims at printing made easy for remote working scenarios, as the slide mentions as well. Now, of course, WVD is a remote working scenario, but it also means that what I'm going to show you in just a couple of minutes also works for all other types of remote working scenarios. You don't have any print drivers to install or maintain, which is something they have been doing for many years. They support all types of devices. They have their own protocol as well, which is called TMF, which takes care of compression, encryption, and some other stuff as well. Okay, so From a WVD and on-premises point of view, this is what your environment may look like. You would have a VNet, you would have some sort of Active Directory still for your WVD or within your WVD environment. And from a tri-thread, oh, and by the way, you would have an on-premises print server type of environment as well, which means you could easily reuse something you already have with minimum reconfiguration needed, as I'll talk about in the next minute. So with regards to tri-thread, these are the components you need to worry about. So screwdrivers, which is a pretty cool name, I think so myself, get installed on your WVD machines. You would have a small license server and SQL database, and the print server proxy service, which will be installed on one of your on one of the machines within your WVD environment as well. And it will also need to be installed on one of your print servers, at least on your on-premises environment. That's the print server proxy service. Now, from a more technical point of view, this is how it would work. And by the way, the license, SQL, and print server proxy part will be turned into a as a service component within now and perhaps a couple of months, as I have been told. But more on that in just a few seconds. So from a technological point of view, this is what will happen once a user clicks print on one of your WVD machines, and never mind if it's a website, a PDF, Excel, Word, it doesn't really matter. The screwdriver technology will create a virtual printer, which is not something you'll notice or see as a user. It happens beneath the hood or under the hood, so to speak. It will turn the print job into their TMF format. It will be encrypted, compressed, and sent over to the print server proxy service. From there, it will be sent using that same TMF protocol over ports 3550 and 3551 to the print server proxy service, which lives in your on-premises environment on your print server. So no hassle with VPNs if you don't want to use that, for example. And then the print server or the print server proxy on your on-premises print server will translate the TMF print job into something that your printer will understand, of course, and then it will traverse your local area network to the physical print devices. And that's basically how the tri-thread solution for remote working scenarios works in a nutshell. You will probably have it set up between in about 15 or 20 minutes or something in between. And when the as a service components comes out, it will probably take you somewhere between 5 or 10 minutes even. So even faster. Now, I've been told that within a couple of months' time, or at least somewhere in Q2, they will release version 7, which will mean they will be compatible with the iGel client for WVD. And as you might know, as a sidestep, iGel has the first and I believe only WVD Linux-based thin client, which is certified by Microsoft as well today. And then as of version 7, tri-thread will be fully compatible with that as well. And as I mentioned, the SA service offering, and I believe there will be various offerings to choose from, so perhaps something you might want to keep an eye on. Okay, let's do a short rerun of the things we've talked about so far. So data inventory, sizing assessment, general recommendations. We had a look at Lakeside, the 60-day free offering you can use from them via Azure. Make sure to let them know. They will create an account for you, and it's very straightforward to set up, as I've shown you as well. And of course, Liquidware can help with that as well using Stratosphere UX. The WVD deployment part, very easy, straightforward to use. Graphical user interface by Nerdio, including the FSLogic bits and bytes. Autoscaling I showed you, the FSLogic bits and bytes I didn't show you, but just as easy, a few clicks, a few check boxes here and there. Applications, printing, scanning. We just talked a little bit about tri-thread, and I tried to show you a couple of things as well in my own way. And of course, we spoke about the cloud paging technology by Noomsend. We spoke about the user profiles, data migration, where Liquidware Profile Unity can help. And by the way, Profile Unity also does some stuff around workspace management and things like that. So you might want to have a look at that as well. Workspace and image management, we had a look at Nerdio for that as well, or at least I told you a thing or two about that. And monitoring and optimizing. which of course is Lakeside, and I just mentioned IGEL, which has the the world's first WVD Linux-based client, basically. And of course, they have a whole portfolio around zero-client thin clients. Their software is great as well, very easy to manage everything. And we started this presentation, or at least this part of the presentation, with the desktop as a service solution providers, Citrix, VMware, Workspot, and CloudJumper. So let's talk just a minute about the WVD community, because this is a community-driven, initiative, right? It has it in the name, basically. So here I wanted to share with you one of my community buddies, Neil, just started the WVD community just a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things he introduced is the weekly WVD newsletter. Pretty amazing. It must cost him a ton of work. I've subscribed right away. It's something I asked for when he announced it, and he made it happen, I think 30 minutes later. So I subscribed and now read it I think it's every Sunday. Holds a ton of information, everything that happens around WVD in a week time, from the vendors, from the community members, the websites, the webinars, things like this today as well, of course. You can find, including all links and other information within that newsletter. So go and have a look, subscribe, and you'll be glad that you did. And of course, the WVD Community Initiative, and you can see the icon in the top right as well. As a whole, it has a website which is being worked on right now. And more will follow besides the WVD newsletter. He has multiple volunteers helping him already, so pretty cool stuff. He has his own website, and I would suggest to visit his website, as you can see in the bottom. Follow him on Twitter, and he'll be glad to explain you everything that is going on around the WVD initiative, including the newsletter and basically everything you can think of. So I mentioned that I talk fast, so these are my key takeaways from the presentation. I think I'm about 5 minutes early. At least that's what I time boxed for myself, but a little bit nervous, talk a little bit faster. So let's have a look at the key takeaways. Perhaps you guys have some questions I can answer in just a couple of minutes time, or not. That's fine as well, of course. And I'm sure that all of the vendors I mentioned today will be more than happy to answer all of the questions you might have, or give you a demo, give you a free license. I don't know, actually. I haven't made any agreements with them, so but I know how the work works, so that might work. The partner ecosystem is important to Microsoft, and vice versa. Of course, the partners fill in, well, I don't want to call them gaps, but I guess it's a little bit of that, because Microsoft has a strong focus on the core technologies around WVD. It's important, they don't have hundreds of people working on WVD solely, so they rely on the partners to make life a little easier for the people who want to use WVD as well, I guess. So that's only fair. They need each other. I think the partner ecosystem as a whole, not just from a technological point of view for Microsoft, is extremely important. I've read somewhere that they have 64 or perhaps even 65,000 partners globally, and that's only channel. So I think it's around 95% of their global revenue. So very important. There's basically a point solution for almost everything you'd like to do on top of or besides WVD. Don't get carried away, as far as I'm concerned. Think it through, I meant to say, because it has a downside as well. You'll need to manage, and you'll need to get to know all of those solutions as well. And you'll probably end up with 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever the amount is of solutions you would like to use. Different management interfaces to manage or to work with as well. So keep an eye on the WVD roadmap. It has been mentioned once or twice already, I believe, today. But for those of you who might have tuned in later, it will tell you everything that has been released up to now, everything they are working on, with a timeline when it will be released as well, including a short description. So pretty neat. And by the way, if you go to the roadmap with regards to WVD, you'll see that there's a roadmap basically for every major Azure subscription solution out there, basically. There's a ton of free content. Think of the WVD community initiative, and even more importantly, let's make it as big as it can get. Contribute if you can yourself as well. So the slide deck will be available on basvankaam.com as well. not too long from now. And with that, I'd like to thank Microsoft again, Christian again. The organization has been awesome. Something you guys don't see or don't hear anything about, but I can tell you it's been flawless almost up till now. So great work to the team. Thank you. Thanks everyone for staying online or coming online to listen and to look at my session. And I'm sure we'll connect in one way or the other in the future. So a big thank you for now. Enjoy the rest of the day. There's some good stuff coming after me as well, of course. So thanks very much.